Hello and welcome to the Dead Unicorn. My name is Corey. It's the Tabletop Role Playing Game Club, and I'm here with Howard, and we're going to talk about game mastering stuff. We're going to talk about tips and tricks for game mastering, and today we're going to focus in on how to get your game back on track when it's kind of been derailed into a bad place, right? That's the theme?
That is what we're doing as far as I know. Yes.
Anything else you'd like to add on that before we dive right in?
No, we can dive right in. I'm good with it.
Okay, but before that, we did take questions. I asked questions on my Patreon, on my Discord. So if you want to send me questions directly, you'll get priority if you're a Patreon member. But also, you can just send me questions here live, and depending on how many people we have, we might or might not get to them.
Neat. That's awesome that you can do that.
Hold on. Something's very wrong with my
Or
stream
not.
here. Okay, we're good now. We're good now. Just have to make sure my stream's good. What if we started the stream and we just didn't talk? We just stared at each other
Just
for a
stared
long
at things, typed. I'm gonna purposely type loud.
We'd suddenly caught. We just uh
I like the idea that we even just like chat like we normally would, just like we're quiet for a while. Then it's like, hey, check out this meme.
and no one gets to see the meme. No one on the stream.
That would be awesome.
And we don't make a big deal about it. We're just like, that's great. That's great. No clue as to what we're doing. Okay. That would be a terrible time for other people.
Weird as if that becomes your highest viewed video.
That would be terrible. But that would be probably a terrible time. So how would you if that becomes your role playing game, we need to fix that. We need to fix it fast. And I guess there's several different ways a game can go bad. And I think we should talk about those first before we talk about how to solve those, because from what I can tell, from what I can think of, there's the out of character stuff that can tank a game, and there's the actual story and in character stuff that can tank a game, and they're very different animals.
There's some like general advice that you should discuss during your session zero. First, have a session zero. That's super important. Just so that everybody is on the same page and they understand some general things that you think are good for making the game flow at your table. Because, if you are playing with a bunch of people that are only there because they enjoy the combat of a dungeon crawl, and you're looking to run this in-depth political societal game, you need to work that out ahead of time. and then, of course, sometimes people are just nervous around new players. We just had an issue with that, or you just had an issue with that,
Yeah.
where they wanted to have a session zero and ended up bailing just because well, I don't know what their reasons for bailing was, but I know that they were upset that they didn't get time to get to know everyone before the first game.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that was a problem. So I there were some other things going on with that too, but uh, I would rather talk about something else.
No, we're gonna call everyone out by name. No, I'm just kidding.
No, seriously, man. Like,
I'm
so
kidding. I'm kidding.
so the thing was it's a good idea to have that session zero. You're absolutely right. And what ended up happening was I had a migraine. And since I'm the game master, everything, the people couldn't put that together themselves. Nobody could take the initiative on that. So I ended up basically flubbing on the entire thing, And yeah, that sucks. It was terrible. It was a terrible time, and I felt really bad about it.
Well, that's kind of the point. Is what do you do when games go wrong? In this case, your best option would be to try and reschedule and find another player to round out your cast or your player base. And if you'd like, I could tell my own embarrassing story. I'll do a story time of time that I screwed up. It was actually the first game I ever ran that I really ran. I'm not counting like I got the neighborhood kid to play with me and I didn't know what I was doing. But I mean, I like sat down in a game store and tried to run a game after, because it was like 1982 was when I was first introduced to D&D, but it was high school before I actually started running it and interacting with other people. And I had been just reading the books and trying to emulate things I had seen my dad and my older brother do in the couple of games that I had gotten to play. So I had like folders filled with mazes I had drawn to create these incredible labyrinths and all this stuff that I was just excited to finally get to bring to the game. And fast forward to high school, and I'm just beside myself with excitement, and I have that binder still of these old hand drawn complex maze dungeons from when I was in middle school. And uh, during that game, I had this like slow dawning horror that everyone was bored. It was like a total slog. Their faces were just ranging from bored to exasperated. And in creating these dungeons, my younger self was like had seen the movie like Labyrinth, and that pin, like shot of the entire labyrinth. I had drawn my mazes like that. So I was describing them walking down hallways that end for no reason and let them search around for a while until they got mad and go the other direction. Like you were playing a maze game on the back of a cereal box, but I thought it was cool and I realized it was not cool. So in real time, I did manage to start to fix it. I started adding monsters where they hadn't been monsters. Now, none of them made any sense. Like, there was no, oh, okay, so this is a place that has been taken over by orcs, so there are going to be orcs in here, and orcs sometimes work with goblins and kobolds. We could throw those in. It was more like I was just randomly flipping through the monster manual and just calling out something that sounded cool, and I kept doing it. Until I got to like one really big room that I made up, and just like I deleted a lot of the maze in my head as I drew it out on the table for them, and just made a big room. And their final battle was with a big old dragon skeleton thing, and they ultimately beat it after a very long combat, and they seemed kind of happy with it at the end. So I pulled it out, except that I was still devastated because that game was, in my opinion, total ass. There was no cohesive story. There was no point to it. And my mazes weren't appreciated, even though I thought they were cool. None of it was. And I started to see all the holes in everything I had done. And I would like to say that ever since then, I have done better. But in every game, you're going to hit points where you're like, oh, what am I doing? This is bad. And you're going to want to fix it. And that was the worst game I ever run. But in my defense, it was my first.
Yeah, well, I've had games that
That was at my brother's store, but before I met you.
uh, I've definitely had games that just ran into like the boredom zone. I've had games that got off the rails because there was a TPK that just kind of sort of happened. Um,
Mm.
or sometimes the game is so deadly that people get killed multiple times, and then they feel like, you know, if you kill somebody a couple times in a game, they might feel like they're not having enough fun because if they have to keep making a character, it's an investment in time, but also like if you can't defeat things, like if you can't overcome these challenges and you're constantly making a new character, it's not fun.
It's not. Also, there's additional problems where if you kill me a few times, I'll either go, "Wow, this game is too hard. I don't want to play," or "Is this guy targeting me?" And
Mm-hmm.
there's something you got to always worry about is how you're clicking with your players. Are they understanding your intents? Do they think you're after them? Are you after them? Because don't be.
Our first Dead Unicorn game we ever played, the Dungeons and Dragons, where we were playing classic modules. We were doing Isle of the Dreaded Accursed. No, that's not right. We were doing
Nope.
Isle of Dread, the original, the just Isle of Dread, the classic Isle of Dread, with dinosaurs and stuff. The problem is you're coming from the north and you have a long voyage, and they want you to do like random encounters during the voyage, and then you get to the north edge of the island, but that's not where you're supposed to dock. And if you dock there, you're in the high level area. You're supposed to go down to the bottom. And I know, because you were like, Corey, we're just trying to get onto that island because we don't want these random encounters at sea anymore. So, we kind of forced it. And I was like, well, I was trying to put more bigger and bigger things in your way to stop you. And it went totally off the rails. And
and that is something that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And the way I course corrected that was I simply grabbed another module that mystically transported you to another place. In the module, it says you get mystically transported. That's the first thing that happens in the module. So I was like, well, then we'll just stop this because it's not happening. So we'll shift gears and go straight into this other module, which was Castle of Amber. And that was pretty fun. That until
Was
it fell
that the
apart.
one that had a bugbear or something that was dressed as a woman inside of a room?
Which one?
That was so weird.
Castle of Amber?
Castle Amber. I think that was the one.
I
Had some cross-dressed, like, I don't know if it was cross-dressed or it was just a female, like, goblinoid creature. And I don't remember if it was actually the princess transformed into a monster or if it was just some random monster that was a woman. It was so weird.
all I know
Yeah, we
is
were like, do we be nice to it?
I yes. Yes, it did, and it wasn't actually the princess. The princess was actually dead and stuffed in the chimney.
Oh my. I don't think we found her.
You didn't. She wanted to be the princess, so she killed the princess and stuck her in the chimney and then put on her dress.
I think that it was my assumption that the princess had been like cursed or something, and I was like, well, we have to help her. And I don't think we ever did get to resolve what she was. That's hilarious. She was up the chimney? That's hilarious.
Uh-huh.
All right. But that's a great pivot, and that's a great answer, because that's similar to my issue with my game, is that it was not fun. It was stuff that sounded cool in theory, and then when you started running it, the players are like, eh. And a lot of classic D&D is like that, and it was because Gygax, when he wrote those things, and the other guy that made Mystara, I forget his name at the moment, I've blanked, but the other guy, when they wrote them, their original concept was tactical gaming, and their role play was just, you're going to be the role of the fighter or the magic user. They didn't even call it wizard yet. So when you were filling that role, they didn't actually mean you're gonna walk into a tavern and have this whole like dialogue every time. They just had some quick box text, then you made some decisions and moved forward. They didn't expect us to turn it into the drama that we have. And a lot of those games are like that, where it's just, here's how you do this tactically, and this is the struggle that they will have until they get through it, and then this goes on to the next obstacle, and it's just there's so many charts of wandering encounters. We came up with 100 things that might occur. Roll a d100. Just, okay. It didn't make a cohesive story all the time. It was just stuff. That wasn't your fault. That was literally in the module. But oh man, playing through it when you want to role play versus roll dice, that's a slog. which is the same mistake I made, except I didn't have the excuse of saying the module told me to. That was all in my own head, my own adolescent head of what would make a cool game.
Sometimes you just don't foresee what's going to happen in the future. You don't know what the players are going to do. If I thought, like, as soon as you landed that, or as soon as you saw land, that you'd want to stop immediately, despite the danger of docking wherever you wanted, I probably would have just had a storm blow you off course and then you'd wind up at the bottom instead of the top. Looking back, it seems so obvious now. Why wouldn't you just, power your way through? I mean, you're the heroes. Do it. But, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
well.
Those old modules, you're right. They need to, if you're going to play it with a modern role-playing game crowd, you need to somehow elevate them from being little monster hunting expeditions to something a little better. And that.
Do you remember B2, Keep of the Borderlands?
Yes.
Literally, that game was written to be played over and over and over. You go to a keep, and then you keep going down and delving into this catacombs, and you're just like, okay, this is the treasure we found this time. We go back to the keep, we heal up, we rest, and tomorrow we start the expedition again, and this time we'll go left and see what happens. And you're supposed to just keep replaying. That's not an exciting game. It's just clearing room from room and then going, all right, that's enough for a day. Let's pack it in.
And yet people point to that as one of the best modules from the B series. They're like, Keep of the Borderlands is great.
It's because everybody got one. It was included in one of the basic sets. So everybody got it. So everybody's familiar with it rather than the other one. So when their nostalgia brain is telling them, oh, it was so great, and they're remembering like some scenes that were cool, but if they were to sit down and read it from cover to cover, they'd be like, what is this bullcrap?
So we got to get back on topic. We're now just reviewing old modules.
That's my bad.
So what happens when your game goes off the rails? Let's talk about, like, I know we got a question from from my fans on Discord.
Well, there was an answer in there from Wargriz, which I'm going to quote, if you're all right with that.
Sure.
It was, what do you do when your game's going off? Or how do you know your game's going off, I believe was the question. And Wargriz said, when you start to dread an upcoming session or get happy when a session is canceled. And I think at that point, that's most likely conflict there. You need to sit with your players and have some real talk. Because I've been in those games where I'm I'm a player and I'm so bored, I'm just like, you're my friend, I don't want to tell you, but at the same time, I'm not looking forward to tonight's game. I don't mean you, obviously, but, I've been in that situation where you're like, oh, good, somebody can't make it. Oh, I can't either. You know what? I don't want to play without Joe, so we're just going to skip. When it gets to that, yeah, you need to sit down and talk, and you need to be honest. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that plagues all games is us trying to be decent to each other when we're not having fun.
And nobody wants to.
And that's the players need to tell the DM, and also the DM or GM needs to tell the players, hey, guys, I'm trying to run this, and y'all are on Facebook or whatever, TikTok or whatever the kids are doing these days,
It's also can be hard to talk to each other, and a lot of people have fear of confrontation. They don't want to. If I express what I want, it could come into conflict with what they want, and then nobody's happy and everybody's miserable, and everybody, like, you might say something different than what you actually mean to spare somebody's feelings. Right? That
Yeah.
happens a
Well,
lot.
you and I are really old friends. So if I'm not having fun in your game, I'll try to have the decency to do it off camera, or not in front of the group. But I am going to tell you. And you and I have said things probably on camera that made people go, "Whew, they must hate each other now." And we've done that plenty of times. But that's something that not everybody has. That whatever, what are we, 30 years of friendship now, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, more than that.
Mm-hmm.
So not everybody has that solid base where they're like, all right, if I tell him this game sucks, we're still friends tomorrow. I'm still going to play this next game.
Right.
But yeah, if you don't have that, you're like, all right, I don't want to tell him. I don't know how he's going to take it. He may hate me. Everybody's going to hate me. I understand all that anxiety. But on the other hand, if you're not honest, you're going to keep not having fun. And for all you know, they're not having fun either. Because if you're not invested, that makes it harder for others to be invested. As soon as there's one guy on his phone like this the entire game, checking his Facebook, swiping right on Tinder, whatever he's doing, or left, I don't know what he's looking at. But yeah, that starts to bring the game down. I did have that happen once during a game where I was running, and one person was invested, and I had one player who was on his phone because he said he needed his phone to roll dice, and that's where his character was and all that. And I was like, okay, but you have to stay offline. We are focused on the game. It was a tabletop game with an actual table, and most of us were pen and paper. And he's like, yeah, no problem. And sure enough, he got on Facebook and started looking at stuff. Well, I described this whole scene. They were staking out this apartment, this medieval town, and they were across the street looking up 3 stories, waiting for somebody to go into this doorway. And when I finally said that they saw the guy, after having outlined the whole thing, he goes, I charge. Because he had not been paying attention. He had been bored off his butt because he wasn't listening to anything anybody else was saying. He didn't care what the other players were doing or my description. When he was finally there was something to do, he's like, I charge. I was like, are you sure? And he said, yes. And then he started saying that he charged the guy. He had his axe out, all this stuff. I'm like, great. And I described him covering his movement speed going across the street and starting to go up the stairs, and he was out of movement. And he was pissed off. He's like, well, why didn't you explain the scene? So I then pointed to the paper in the middle of the table where I had drawn the scene and an X where they were. And he's like, oh. So he blew that whole encounter, and they still ran with it. And it was, one person out of the game kills it. So you need to not only be invested in what your game master is saying, but try to be interested in what the other players are doing, especially in combat. If you're fighting the dragon and you're doing whatever you're doing at the dragon, and you take a bunch of wounds and it gets around to me, and I have to be able to heal you, and I'm not having to pay attention, I'm not going to heal you. So you have to be interested not just in the game master, but your fellow players. And if you can't focus like that, you got to find a way to do it. Now, I feel like this is targeting the players, but really, I in my experience as game master, I'm always paying attention to what the players are doing, so I can plan my next step.
Players got to take responsibility for the fun too. You've got to be proactive. You've got to, do the work to make sure that the game is fun, not just for the game master to do all the heavy lifting. The game master puts out clues for you. You follow those clues. I know me and you, we play in a Pathfinder game together. And right now, we've got a semblance of a mission. And when something like that happens, I go at it full bore. I'm just like, okay, we need to find these artifacts. We're in this town. I'm gonna try and do the footwork that I need to do. And so there's a university in this town. I go to the university and I'm gonna find out information about these artifacts. And the game master is just like, well, there's really nothing there because this is a small town and you kind of spun all your wheels. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? Like, wasn't this the game? And he's like, well, I'm trying to be realistic about it. And I'm like, no offense to the game master. Like, he's trying, he's like, I know he's got something. He's got something together. I think maybe I went off in a little wrong way, but
Yeah.
But that's the kind of, that's the kind of person I am. I'm just like, this is where the fun is. I run towards the fun part.
Yeah, yeah, you do. Even if you TPK the party that way. I'm not bitter.
This is where the fun is. This is the direction. Guys, we made it to the island. We have to get onto the island right now. I know these are rocky shoals that are filled with giant sharks and crocodiles, but we're going to go.
I mean, it does seem like that's where we were supposed to go. And we were fighting to get there. And in the other game, yeah, that's the question. I'm not saying his game has gone off the rails. Which is
No.
of this.
I'm just
his
saying.
game's fine. Still
I'm
going.
just saying, like, no. I'm not. I'm not blaming you for it. I'm just saying, like, you were trying to be a good player. You were trying to be a good steward of fun by doing that. Same as me. Which kind of goes into like, as a game master, you can kind of kill fun by shutting down an idea, right?
Yeah.
If a player has an idea and wants to do something, there's two things you can do about it. One, lean in, right? Move the plot forward. Give them a little bit of what they want at least. Give them something, a new direction to go in, something that makes their time and effort worthwhile. Or the second thing is make it a red herring. Give them something that's a red herring, but make it like something that's also really cool. That it doesn't waste their time, a red herring. It's more like you found out a total different part of the world because of what you did.
Yeah, that could be cool. I can definitely see that. But then you would face, and that's just my immediate worry. Like, all right, you look into that, and while you didn't find what you were looking for, you do find out that there's this whole organization that's doing this other thing. Will they then be like, I think the plot is over here now with this whole thing that I just found? Oh, wait, no. Oh.
You could derail your entire game.
So that, yeah, be careful with the red herring. Like, don't give them too much unless you want them to go that direction. You just be like, hey, cool. It's not, you realize this isn't what you're looking for, but maybe you found a magic item or, something small that you can take back to the plot.
Exactly. Don't try and waste your players' times. I mean, we only do this for a couple hours every week, and we want to make it worthwhile, What else? What other situations can ruin a game? We talked about, I don't think we went into TPK.
I'll go into TPK because I experienced that recently as a game master. And when that happened, not real recently, it's been like a year now, I think, but it's been a bit. But when it happened, afterwards, I started going over in my head, what did I do wrong? What could I have done better? Because it's always, in my head, it's always my fault when things go wrong because I have issues. But I think that what I might have done differently to try and lead y'all out of the TPK at the very beginning is when you started leaning into that, I could have said, all right, we had some intelligent characters in the group. I could have just leaned in and said, hey, you would realize that if you jump into this fight with this creature that is a beholder in a mech suit, which is clearly very powerful and might destroy all of you, while your noble intention would definitely be there to protect, you were trying to protect the crew that you thought were going to die because of his experiments. But if you get in a fight with him and you die, then they're definitely going to die because of experiments. So it might have occurred to you, and I could have just said, you might think twice and see if there's anything else you could do before doing that. And while that is you, if I know for a fact, and I knew there was mathematically, unless you came up with something insane, mathematically no way you were going to take that beholder. I even played it as random as I could, like not strategic. I was rolling to see who he attacked, which of his eye stalk tentacles he used next. I tried real hard, but I was like, this is not the time for this fight yet in this campaign.
You want to
But
know?
if I had given you a little bit more info, like shown you the error of your way, I know it feels a little like railroading. I think that might have helped you to see where the plot should go.
Um, you know what's
And
interesting
I'm
about?
so afraid of railroading, I won't do it. I'll be like, it's a sandbox. Do whatever you want. You want to attack the monster? All right.
Oh,
You're a funeral.
I have no problem kind of guiding my players or telling them, giving them hints on where to go next. I don't mind that at all, because I want to keep moving the plot forward. And I wrote a lot, and I want people to experience it. I don't like railroading can be a thing, but I don't really think it like really is, unless you have that like GM character that just does everything and pulls everybody in the same direction, or you know I think the most of the day-to-day choices are the player's choices. But the big picture, like every plot should have that kind of big picture structure that gives clear goals of where a player should go. But I think that's a discussion for an entirely different time on railroading.
Yeah.
What I do want to say though,
I have seen railroading. I've had railroading in my interest in a game where I was a player. And it wasn't even railroading. It was just, I guess it was kind of railroading. What essentially happened was, I'm not going to name anybody here. The game master had set up this thing where this noble wanted to hire our PCs to go do something, and the guy was super shady. And I was the guy with the roguish abilities, and I was like, I'm going to sneak into the noble's house right before the meeting where he's going to, talk about what we're going to do. I just want to sneak in, look around, and see if I can learn anything about this guy so I can decide if he's too shady, if we shouldn't work for him, maybe if I can get any info. And I would have been okay if I had searched and either gotten caught or searched, found nothing, and came back out and said, I got nothing, let's just go meet him. But what happened was I made my checks to climb the walls and stealthy and get into a window, and I was in his room, and I just searched his room. And the game master lost his temper and told me, there's nothing there, okay? You find nothing. And it was like, there's nothing written for that. So just go back to the party. And I was like, oh. And it felt like I had walked into a town, and it was like I just saw like the set, like the false fronts of these buildings. It just totally took me out of any immersion. I'm like, oh, okay. If he had just said, you find nothing without losing it, I'd have been like, okay, cool. I made my rules. You search diligently. You see his underwear. You don't see anything cool hidden there. Okay, bye. And I would have gone back out because I didn't want to get caught. I was going to go room to room until I got found. But instead, he lost it, and he's like, "There's nothing there. There's nothing written for that." And as soon as he said that, I think is when I fell out, and I no longer cared. And it was partially on me. I couldn't move forward from that, but it also just killed it for me. Like my immersion was gone. I can now just see, okay, this guy can't run outside the box, so we just follow along, do whatever he says. There's nothing outside the written plot. You just have to figure out what that is and just follow that string, and that killed it for me.
Okay, this is a little off topic, but it goes back to the beholder in a mech suit, because I've been trying to get this out for a while. The feeling I got from the beholder in the mech suit is probably the entire wrong feeling. I shouldn't have got from it. Was that mech suit was his like handicap thing, like he couldn't fly on his own, or he was like things were hard for him, so he made himself like a robotic kind of walker wheelchair thing. And so I was like, well, maybe he's like weaker than other beholders.
I could see why you would think that. Like, I get where you're going, and in a way, you're not wrong. The reason he built it is because he had been changed by the plane that he traveled through, and beholders are so weird. There is lore on them that says that they exist mostly in their own mind. So, like, if they the undead beholders are only undead because they think it. I mean, there's some really weird lore out there for beholders. So in his mind, his mind had been warped and he couldn't fly anymore. So he built this huge mech suit and was walking around in it. But he still had all of his powers.
Right.
And on top of that, he had a better armor class because of the mech suit. He just
Oh.
didn't fly, but he didn't need to because mech suit.
Right. Right. I was just being ableist, is
So
all.
he's actually slightly worse than a regular beholder.
See, I was being ableist. He was better because of that.
Right, right. And I just didn't expect you to attack it. And I could have pivoted and made him weaker and gone that direction. And that actually did cross my mind, but I didn't want to do that because he is the big bad. And I would have to then pivot again and have him do something else to become more amazing so he could still be the big bad
Right.
in the
Right.
end. And I was like, well, I don't want him to, and I didn't want you to kill the big bad early on either, just because I made him weak so you could. It was a very weird situation.
So there's an interesting character. Do you know about the anime One Piece?
Yeah, I'm familiar with One Piece.
So there's a
I've
character.
only seen like a few seasons of the beginning, so I don't know everybody, but I've also seen the Netflix version.
There's a character called Bartholomew Kuma, and basically he is an unwilling member of the military. He doesn't want to be there. He wants to fight against the military, but because of circumstances, he's within their thrall currently. And the One Piece characters are fighting some of the biggest, baddest people in the military, and they can't win. There's no win for them. And yet they decided to fight anyways because that's just how they are. So Kuma takes it upon himself not to betray the military, but to save the crew of One Piece anyways. And he does that because his a special ability apparently is to teleport you away. And he does that by like striking you with his like neat bear paw hand. He'll hit you, and every time somebody gets hit, they disappear as if they're no longer in existence, which horrifies the crew. Every time they see one of their crew members vanish. And after all of them are struck, of course, they all realize all they did was teleport away. And now they have to figure out how to get back to each other because the teleporting teleports them to random locations. Um, Gratefully, they all teleported onto land since the world of One Piece is all ocean. You would think, but yeah,
There's a lot of islands.
they all wound up on islands, and they decided to train and come back 2 years later. And you know, maybe if there's a big bad that the players have to challenge early on, right? Maybe, or not even challenge early on, but just kind of interact with, and there's a possibility that it might go off the rails. Maybe there's a mechanism in place that, after the main bad guy gets off a couple good hits that bring a couple PCs down without 100% killing them. They just go, I do 50 points of damage, you go down. Right? I do 50 points of damage to you, you go down. Once two people go down, then the fail safe that you've put in there occurs, and it moves the PCs off the board.
That would have actually worked. I could have done that. I could have. There actually was a combat that was about to happen if y'all hadn't attacked the beholder, in that you didn't know that your crew had mostly been turned into space clowns at this point. So I could have had the crew just come in as y'all started the fight, and then he could have said, well, this whole experiment is ruined, and he could have just left. And then you would have still fought the space clowns. I could have continued. There are a lot of things that I came up with I could have done different. But in the moment,
Right.
I didn't think of them.
So we're kind of understanding, like, players will do the worst things sometimes with the best of intentions, the worst things. um and I think there does need to be some fail safes in there. If if the players decide to do that worst thing, there should be something there that kind of a trap opens up and everybody slides through, or instead of the main bad guy killing them instantly with disintegration beams, perhaps he's prepared for that and his mech leg opens and gas bombs come out and everybody falls asleep, and then they wake up in a dungeon somewhere, and then they have to start from square zero again.
Yeah, all things I could have done if and you know what? I don't really have a good excuse on that now. That, as like I say, it's been a while. I've blamed myself for a lot. Um, I had a week. I knew you were about to fight it, and I spent most of that week being annoyed that the game was going to end, rather than figuring out a way to make it not end.
It's okay. We all have feelings. We all have these feelings. They make us do things that maybe we shouldn't do, but they're someone needs to validate our feelings before we can move on sometimes. Yeah, and that's one of the things when you're saying like we need to talk about this, we need to take some time, but it's hard to talk. It's hard sometimes to first off get people together to speak to each other, to speak in that plain language that facilitates good communication, because we're worried about what other people might think, or we're worried that our point of view is somehow invalid. Just saying like we need to sit down and talk is one thing, and having good honest communication can be entirely another.
That's absolutely true, and that goes back to things like session zero, and I guess it's not really a session zero, but like once a game is going on, occasional like a checkup with your doctor. You need to check in with your DM, your narrator, whatever he's called, and you just say, hey, everything all right on your end? This is what we're seeing? Maybe the narrator should be scheduling that, or something. Just every once in a while, everybody needs to get together and just have a chat, or just have like an open Discord channel where y'all can chat about it between games, or something else you can do, and just make sure everybody's still on the same page, everybody's still having fun, and everybody feels seen or heard or whatnot.
At the end of my last game of Legend of the Five Rings, I had a player who wanted to speak with me after the game privately, and we did. Yeah, and she had a problem, and I know saying she like it's now 2/5 of the game. Like it's either Sasha or my wife. She was like, hey, I feel like you weren't fair here, and I want to know what's up or what's going on. And we talked about it and we resolved it to. I think she feels like it's fair now. I hope so.
All right. Did she cook you dinner that night? We're gonna narrow it down. Don't answer that, obviously.
It had to do with rewards and such. So in-game rewards. So yeah.
Quick tip: if you're playing in a game and you don't want to tank it, stop saying every single game, "Do we level?" It just makes your game master feel like you're not really invested. You're just there for the points.
I'm always excited to level up.
I don't know. I hate level-based systems. I love skill-based, but
Well, yeah, that's one of the difference between level and skill-based systems is when you have a skill-based system, you get XP every game, and you can just kind of like make your character a little better here and there always. Whereas in a level-based system, like it's a big jump all at once, but it feels so long. So in between those jumps, it takes so long for you to
Yeah,
get
there's
there
no growth,
sometimes.
no growth, no growth. You take a nap, and now you can cast some finger of death spell, and everybody's like, "What the hell? Why didn't you do that yesterday?" I didn't know how to yesterday, but tonight I'll figure it out. It turns out that in my spell book, I just needed to flip to the next page. That's where it was.
Our old level versus skill based system video still does really well. Just me and you talking about that.
I,
And the biggest criticism is we don't say good enough things about level based systems.
well, I feel like it almost was like a debate where you were on the level base and I was on the skill based side, even though we didn't mean for it to end up that way. And it was more, and also there was more trying to explain what skill based was, because there a lot of people didn't really understand. They'd only played D&D, so I think that might be why we focused that direction. I mean, if you want to do an update sometime, I'm good with that.
We can do that. You know, I think that's a great idea. Uh, in fact, do you want to? You know what? Our next stream is going to be. I don't know. So Tarek is out right now. If anybody's wondering, hey, where's Tarek? He's getting a little bit of surgery done, and that has taken him out for a week or two on these streams. He's just not feeling up to it. I hope by next week he'll be
He's tied
back.
up in my basement.
I hope by next week he'll be back. Um, if not, I'll be here with Howard again. If he is back next week, then I'll be. I think Howard is going to be an every other week kind of guest. Is that what we want to do?
That's fine with me.
Yeah, and we'll talk about what our next subject is and post that on Patreon and on our Discord. And you can ask your questions there and we'll take them live on the stream. Um, Anything else you'd like to add, Howard? As we're about to wind down, we got like 5 minutes left if you want to bring up one more example or anything else you got to talk about.
There was another topic that I thought was interesting. Was there are times when the game is fine, but when you as a role player feel like you may have personally screwed up your involvement in the game. I don't know. This has happened to me a few times where I write a character one way and I start playing, and then I forget how to play the character I wrote. And like mid game, I'm like, oh god, what am I doing? I have done this totally wrong, and now I don't know if I want to keep playing the character, if I want to rewrite him, if I want to ask for a retcon. I realize we're towards the end here, but to give one example of that, and sadly I have many, which is embarrassing. One of the worst that I think I did was actually in a live action role play game where I had written a character with the idea that he was going to be a super creepy guy who used invisibility a lot and mental powers a lot to talk through telepathy and just hide in shadows all the time. And when I entered the game, somebody had a mental power to spot invisible people immediately, so I got seen. Well, I had given the character the mute flaw, so he would never speak out loud. And I forgot. And when they caught me, I just started going, oh, well, you caught me. So I just got in a conversation with the person. Totally forgot I was supposed to be mute. Started talking to random people. And like a good hour into the game, I suddenly was like, oh no. What have I done? I'm not playing this weird, creepy guy at all. I'm just playing a dude who was invisible for a moment, and I totally forgot what I was doing. I got involved in a conversation. It was embarrassing. I just retired that character. I never played it again. Nobody cared.
Yeah, it's harder to revise your character if your character is part of a giant club where they meticulously like take care of what your character is and how it progresses and everything like that. But at a table, like I've never had a problem saying, especially if it's in one of the first two sessions, being like, yeah, change it to however you like it. It's all right. Um, yeah, and uh, if it's later on, the more you play your character, the more hesitant I am to say, especially if you had this power from the beginning, to be like, well, I mean, this is we've done a lot, and your character has done this, and now we're facing like big continuity issues. But the older I get, the more I'm just like, why does it even matter? You should be able to play your character as fun as you want, as long as the character still follows all of the rules. But there's another part of me who's like, the continuity matters, and like if anybody can just change anything for any reason, then what are we doing? Why are we playing this? What is the game?
Yeah, that's definitely a thing. I mean, if to take classical D&D situations of like racism in games where you're like, all right, I want to play an orc. Back in like third edition, you're like a full orc. All right, but so nobody accepts those to walk into town. Ah, it's important. I'm going to be an orc, and then so you start. Everybody's treating them different, doing all this stuff, and then they're like, I'm not really having fun. Let's just say I was a human the whole time, and you're like, oh, okay. Well, that's just weird because we've been for the last several weeks. I've been writing it this way, and I mean, it doesn't really affect the overall plot of the game, but it kind of just sticks in your craw. You're just annoyed. This is the way I've been running it. All of my NPCs have been treating you this way, and this is what you said you wanted, and now you're just like, I was a human the whole time. Why not just make a human? The orc leaves. No, I want to keep this character. You don't, though. You really don't.
Can I can I have a wizard permanent polymorph you into a human? Would that help you out?
That might do it. Just all right. You've been transmogrified or whatever. You've been reincarnated. Reincarnation is such a weird spell.
And that actually like adds something to the story of your character now. Your character isn't just a human. Your character was an orc. And you can play your character like he's an orc. But he looks human and everybody treats him like a human because that's what he looks like. That's a happy medium right there. It's kind of like I'm
That's
gonna
like the idea of every time he goes to bed, he's like, "Why is it so dark? It's so dark in here."
how do you people live? It's kind of like in my Legend of the Five Rings game, the Shadow Empire. Sasha wanted to play a scorpion who was from the Crane clan, and we had to figure out how to make that happen. And we decided the best way to do that is to have you marry into that clan. And she's like, well, I don't want a husband. And I'm like, okay, can you have one for a little bit and then I kill him? And she was like, that sounds great. Let's do that. And her husband's death had become a defining moment for that character.
Well, that's fair. I mean, that's good role play. It would be.
Right? Even though she...
But I would have handed up and made him like the craziest, nicest, like most giving, generous, protective, awesome person that was like just taking care of her in every way, shape, and form and truly adored her. And then all of a sudden, slaughter her.
I told her that everybody's going to love him and then I'm going to kill him and y'all are all going to be sad. I straight up said that. I didn't make him the most loving guy. I mean, he was a Scorpion Clan character, so they have to kind of be deceitful, underhanded. That said, I made him a pretty likable guy, even though he was up to some dirty stuff. He wasn't unlikable. I made him actually do care about her, even though she brushed him off at the way she brushes him off was spectacular. And he tried to do some dirty underhanded things, but everybody forgave him as soon as he died. It was a fun character. It was a fun time. I really enjoyed that. I guess that's it, right? Okay.
That's fine with me.
Thank you for watching. Thanks, James Mills, for your comment. And we'll be back next week. I really hope. I like to do these every Sunday. From me and Howard, go roll some dice.
Or keep gaining XP.